Hello, good morning.
Howdy.
Welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. I would like you to take note of this glorious thing happening back here in the background. It's a lamp on.
Oh, it's like, what is that?
We have power back. We ended up getting it back a couple days before they had projected. They had told us that it was going to be October 7th, and it was sooner than that. And then some of our really good friends were told that they were going to be 3 or 4 weeks out, and theirs actually came back on last night. We had, after we got our power back, we had some of our friends over to eat here, and some of them still were not back in power. And then we got a text that they went home and had it.
Yeah.
Apparently there's been this massive influx of linemen coming to work in this area, so we're so thankful for that, because it has cut down our wait time significantly. You're so not a morning person.
I'm not.
Can you handle this? We're like chugging the coffee to
Getting there.
get your head in the game. So we had our local friends over last night, and we just wanted to kind of talk to them about some of the things we were feeling, and touch base and just share a meal together. But we were talking this morning while we were making coffee, and I really wanted to just turn the camera on and invite y'all in for a conversation. And I want to chat a little bit about preparedness. I guess that's more or less what we're talking about. I would say resilience is probably the word that I like better.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. I think they're probably two different lists of stuff. But if you were involved in this, you lost power or had to deal with shortages of gasoline or things like that, some areas that you need to be more prepared or build up resilience probably were exposed. Mm-hmm. They were for us.
Let's start by kind of sharing our experience of this week, kind of some just the practical stuff that we dealt with. So for a recap, Hurricane Helene hit last Friday. It's been over a week ago now. And we're in the Midlands of South Carolina. The hurricane was projected to go straight up through Georgia into Tennessee. So the main area where it hit here in the southeast was not super prepared, because literally until we woke up with the hurricane coming over us, we had been told you're going to get the outer edges, expect some strong winds, expect some rain. And so we did what we always do is we make sure that there's nothing blocking the drainage. We don't have any obviously dead limbs hanging, just a quick run through of what to do for strong winds and rain. And honestly, that's fairly common here living in South Carolina. So we keep our farm in pretty tidy shape that we don't have to deal with stuff like that.
Honestly, the last 3 times that they've canceled school because a hurricane was coming up through the Gulf or coming off the coast through Charleston, we got some rain.
Yeah, and so we were not expecting what ended up happening.
Right.
That's lesson number 1. I think it's very easy to put your faith in what's being reported of the weather, different things like that, and we can't do that. We really should be fully prepared regularly, because you just really never know. And you think about things that have happened over the years, like train derailments, or things that there is no forecast for. There's always that possibility, but even these forecasted things, it can be wrong. Had we known that we were in the direct path of the hurricane, we would have done some things differently. We would have had water on hand. We would have had all that stuff. But I guess my lesson is I don't want to be dependent on a correct forecast to make sure that I'm ready for an emergency situation.
Well, I think the big thing is we need to make sure that we're actually ready at any time.
Yeah, for sure. So the hurricane did move. It came up over this side of South Carolina through Georgia. I've not been over to Augusta, Georgia yet, but from everybody that I know there, I've been told it looks like a complete war zone, that they sustained extreme damage. And just noting how different it is, our town, Batesburg, Leesville, was wrecked. The town still in areas does not have power. But 45 minutes east in Columbia, it's really not that bad. There are several big trees down. I mean, some people still like lost their homes, but not mass devastation.
Yeah, and then further west towards Augusta, like Rich Spring got.
It's way worse than even we got. Yeah. So we got the kind of the right eye wall. Eastern eye wall of the storm came over us, but it was big. It was a big storm, so the eye wall was really big, and so the worst of the destruction is just slightly west from us in South Carolina, in this region. Of course, then the storm went up into North Carolina and stalled out over Appalachia. And of course, you have all these mountains and these hills, and they had severe flooding, mudslides, like all kinds of crazy stuff. And of course, there's been a good deal of footage. Our friends, the Roads, posted their video yesterday of the storm, and it was crazy because, like, by the time the hurricane got there, the wind had actually settled some. It was so destructive because it slowed down and then got so much rain. So when it was going over us, it was pitch dark. We couldn't see anything.
We could hear it.
But seeing that storm hitting them and realizing, like, that's what was here was really, really wild. Because I could hear it and I could imagine it, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it knocked over a massive oak tree. I mean, the destruction tells the story, but we did not watch it happen. Anyway, so the day of the hurricane, we're like, oh crud. So immediately I'm like, I am not prepared. And I say that I always want to grow. Like, in any situation, I always want to use the opportunity to get stronger, get smarter, get wiser. I am on a perpetual journey of growth in my life. So anytime something comes up, I'm always going to troubleshoot and find the areas where I can shore things up. So when I say I was not prepared, I'm saying there are definitely some massive holes. But overall, I would say we were more prepared than many of the people that we talked with.
Yeah.
Just because over the years of living like this, I mean, we do have food. Though the morning of, I didn't have a bunch of water stored. I was able to get emergency water filters out. I was able to get rain buckets out. We had the tote of water that we water the animals with, and like we were able to come and filter water. And so it took us, I would say, probably Maya left that day. Was it Saturday? No, you left a little while with the track hoe the
Friday
day of.
evening, I took the track hoe down to our friend's house who had big trees on top of their house, and to get it tarped because there was nowhere for them to go. So we needed to get the trees off to get tarps on the roof so they could stay in the part of the house that was still safe.
Right. And you cleared our road.
Yeah, so on the way back,
mile and a half of our road.
I almost got stuck going to their house, barely got out. So when I was coming back, I parked at the very end of our road where it connects up to the highway and unloaded the track hoe and cleared the whole road all the way back to the next road.
So that day, I would say that I kind of kicked into gear as far as food and water. That was like my focus, and he kind of kicked into gear as far as getting everything safe and secure. Got the generator going on our freezers. We do have one small generator, or I say small, it's just not one to run a whole house, but like a smallish generator.
It's medium size. It's a 9,000 watt.
Yeah, and so we got that on our freezers and fridges. Now, mind you, we've never been through anything like this before, so this was a very big learning experience for us. And then he went to clearing the road and helping the local neighbors once we had established that like there was no security threat.
Yeah, and there was no damage here that needed to be addressed because it was keep making unsafe. So the only thing I did before leaving, as far as like clean up on our property, was the limbs from the trees that fell by the treehouse were laying on the zip line.
There was a lot of tension.
There was a lot of tension. It was kind of pulling on the treehouse a little bit. So I cut those limbs off, took the pressure off. But I mean, honestly, the trees are still.
Yeah, we have not addressed that yet.
I'm actually going to be doing that probably today.
Yeah.
And get them cleaned up. And now I just wanted to wait because it wasn't a safety risk. I just didn't feel like it was a good priority. Honestly, one of the things I felt like was, let's just say, with running a chainsaw, something happens, you get cut, but you don't have running water. Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
It's just not worth the risk. For something that's not hurting anything, if that makes sense. So,
and you've also spent a good deal of time elsewhere using those tools to help people who are in a situation that is actually dire. So we still have cleanup to do here, but it's not a big deal. I mean, like, we cut up trees pretty regularly. That's not a massive deal to us. We kind of split, divide and conquer. I go into food and water and get that situated. You go into, you know, the outside stuff. But he had to go get fuel. That was another hole. Like, we didn't have much fuel stored.
5 gallons?
Yeah, we had like 5 gallons of gasoline. And the lines to get gasoline were...
I mean, panic.
People were panicking. People were waiting 2+ hours in line. They were screaming at each other at gas pumps. And like, people started in our town taking pictures of people who were filling up gas cans and like shaming them on social media about taking more than they need. And like, it was something that I don't ever want us to have to be dependent on being in the middle of again. Like, that was a whoa kind of thing, because I think you see a lot of the good of people pulling together and doing the community thing and helping each other, and that's so good, and we really do need each other. But I think that it's actually wise to keep in mind that in situations of survival, there are a lot of people who don't think that way.
Who are also unprepared. You being unprepared means that you're now having to engage with that. So that was definitely something we were like, okay, this needs to be different. The thing is, we've always thought of situations like this, like, what would we do? And it was always felt so hypothetical. And I mean, we're homesteaders, so like, I've always joked that I'm not a prepper, because 20 years ago when I started saying that, you know, the Doomsday Prepper show was on the TV, and like, there was definitely this edge to the idea of prepping that was linked to a doomsday situation. And honestly, I'm coming to the place of being like, obviously I'm a prepper, and I've said that many times, because obviously I am prepared. Like, it is my mind to be prepared and to be able to live a life that's not easily shaken. But I'm really kind of getting my head wrapped around the fact that, like, preparation keeps you out of feeling doom in situations like this. I mean, there are people who literally had their whole houses washed off the foundations, who had massive oak trees fall into their bedrooms, like crazy stuff that just puts a screeching halt to your life. And honestly, because, for instance, it was like, okay, let's gather up, let's get our stuff handled, we can go help people. Our basic needs did not stop us from being able to be a benefit to somebody else. And that's where it's so important that we do take personal responsibility for our needs. You know, community requires that. Yeah.
Anyway, so the gas thing, I realized that all my hypothetical, yeah, well, if we lost power, I'd have my ponds, I have filters, I have cooking outside. And then I realized in this, I should probably be thinking of some other plans. Because that first couple of days, like toting rainwater, filtering rainwater, we did have outside cooking situations with propane, and we did have propane. But like, okay, so here's another of getting scattered. We have a septic system. The way our septic system is built, because of the way our property is, we have our septic tank outside of our house, and it pumps up to the leach field, which is further away, and it's just because the type of soil we had, that's how we had to do it. The day the power went out, the alarm on the septic tank started to go off saying that it was full. Jeremiah ended up figuring out how to wire the septic tank to the generator to drain it. But for the first few days, everybody's like, why don't you just pull water from the pond and flush your toilets? We couldn't, because our septic tank was full and couldn't pump.
Well, we had all the windows open, and if, I don't know how full the alarm goes off, but I'm assuming it's, probably pretty full. And if it was to get too full,
it would start leaching up.
And again, all our windows are open because it's hot and we need to keep air moving. So then we'd be to have...
And we have to walk through that area to get to our pantry and stuff. So like...
we have that stuff sitting outside while we're trying
not safe.
Yeah, it's just not...
Not good.
Wasn't worth the risk.
So we went... we camp a lot. It's not a big deal. Like, we told all our kids, we're like, listen, dudes, it's the woods. You got to go to the woods. And that made me start thinking we need some composting toilet setups, even if it's just a bucket and like sawdust situation, like something as an emergency that you can maintain, you know, sanitation, that you can keep an area clean and safe. And of course, we have lots of woods we can go in. It wasn't a safety issue. But I know for people who have like a small backyard, what are you going to do if your toilet won't flush?
Right.
And not just, okay, well, I can put water in it and make it flush. Because you can do that. Like, if you are on sewer or if you have septic and it's not full, you can totally fill the tank up of your toilet manually and flush it. You can put water in the bowl and flush it.
Unless there's damage to the sewer system or the water system, and then...
But that's something that you have to think about. I mean, that's just not even something that's really occurred to me that much, because in my hypothetical situation, I'm like, we've got the pond, we can cook outside, we can use the bathroom in the woods, like no big deal. It'd be like camping, and it was like camping. That's exactly what it was like. It was like rudimentary camping in our house.
Okay, rudimentary camping. I was like, honestly, our camping is way more comfortable than that.
Yeah, somebody asked me, they were like, what, could you just bring your RV over and stay in that? And it's like, well, it still needs power and water to run. Like, we can't, without water, we still can't flush that either.
That generator would have had an easier time running and like even being able to run the ACs of the camp. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It would have been easier on a generator to just keep a camper cool, but that doesn't deal with the freezers and the fridges inside the actual house. So like, I have actually thought about that in like a future preparedness. If we were to lose power, I could run a smaller generator just to keep the fridges and freezers running inside the house, and then we could actually move out to the camper. And because of its power consumption, you know, you could run it off of a 50 amp breaker, everything that you could possibly need in the camper. Plus, it has a gas stove, which
right.
would work outside of needing. Say, we have an electric cooktop. So like, I have thought about that, and I think that would be something I would make sure could be set up. Because also the camper has a solar panel that can trickle charge the battery, so like it has a little bit more sustainability connected to it. So I actually have considered that as like a future thing we could move to, really for comfort. It would be for comfort more than anything. That's
the biggest thing that I'm saying. Like, in all my plans, my hypothetical plans, if there were an emergency, we could do XYZ. I really was not considering comfort at all, because you don't think about that whenever you're doing emergency plans. It's like, whatever. But when it comes down to it, when we finally did figure out how to get the generator to cover everything, and Jeremiah figured out how to wire it to the house, we were able to run the ceiling fans. We weren't using really any other power. In the evening, we would turn on like one light in one room, you know, like where we were hanging out. And then the ceiling fans, and then being able to charge things easier without having to recharge battery packs on the generator itself. Being in that situation when those ceiling fans came on, like, I realized like the tension that it took off just to have the air moving in the house. I was like, okay, I really do think that we should consider some measure of comfort, any sort of situation, a survival situation. Say you're in a weather disaster where you're going to be without power for a couple weeks. Like, yes, you can get by at rudimentary camping in your house. Some of you can't even do that though, because if you live in a neighborhood and you have like a postage stamp backyard, if you don't have a bathroom plan, or if you don't have different things, these things can become big issues in even just a couple of weeks.
And the thing about comfort is you got to look at it like this, like, it's not so much just about being like, well, I just, when I'm sitting around doing nothing, I want to be comfortable. Like, that's not really why I view comfort as like somewhat of a priority as best you can. Comfort has to do with like energy expenditure. So like, if you have a ton of work to do, let's say our roads were completely blocked, and let's say I didn't have equipment, I was going to have to cut all these trees by hand just to get out to get fuel for the generator, that kind of situation, which a couple of our friends did actually get put in that position where they had a hard time getting back to their house. And they had to cut themselves out and then cut themselves back in to get back to their house because of road closures and things like that. So an energy expenditure, when you need to reset, when you need to rest and recharge, eat some food, like having some kind of comfort, so a fan, moving air, like being able to even take a cold shower, like it helps you extend what you're capable of doing.
Yes.
Because as discomfort mounts with energy expenditure, getting dirty, getting tired, and then you don't have anywhere that can help you reset, like it compounds.
Yeah.
And you get less effective, then mistakes can happen, that kind of thing. So
that's dangerous.
That's a military thing. Like, you know, when we're out doing jungle exercises in Okinawa, which is probably my biggest experience with like long-term discomfort. Because I mean, I think we were out on an operation. It was a training operation, but it was preparing you for something that could happen. I mean, I think we were out for 4 weeks. That's 4 weeks without a shower. You know, you have one set of clothes for each week. So I mean, you change clothes 4 times, and then you know you're sleeping outside. Okinawa's a jungle. You can imagine what the humidity and the weather and bugs and all that stuff's like. And so they do stuff like and plus, you know, you're primarily eating MREs. So once a day they'll bring in hot coffee, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it seems minimal, but like, it's what you're actually just like, you spend the day looking forward to the time to sit down and eat something hot that you didn't have to like pull out of a bag. You know what I'm saying? And like, so it's kind of like that. Like
it's a morale issue.
It's a morale issue. It's a mental issue than it is so much like your body being comfortable.
So that's kind of like the next thing that I think is really, really important to talk about in preparedness. And this is kind of what we were talking with our friends about last night. I went to New England like a week and a half, 2 weeks before this happened. And I gave a talk about resilience. I called Jeremiah on my way to give this talk, and I was like, I'm feeling kind of anxious because I just wrote out the notes for this talk. And, you know, like really what I've been feeling, and I've got it what I want to say. And I was like, man, this one's going to be intense. And I was like, I feel really intensely about talking about resilience. But it's not just a matter of here's how to prep your pantry, here's how to do this, here's how to do that. I was like, I feel like I want to get to the guts of resilience, which is when I'm in a situation like that and I know I've got to talk to people and I feel really strongly like this is what I need to say. Like, I can't say something else. Like, I have to say that. Like, if I start talking about something else, I'll come back to that. Like, when I get to that place. And it was so wild because honestly, in my experience of having any sort of platform to speak to people, if there is something burning in my heart to say to other people, it is ultimately burning in my heart to apply to my life. Period. Like, because I think you can't lead people to somewhere you're not, ever. And in the resilience thing that we've been dealing with one heck of a summer. I've called it the crushing summer. Crushing, which produces wine, which produces oil. Like, this has been such an intense summer for us. And at the end of it, I'm just burning with this thought of resilience. But the truth is, the thing that will make you the most resilient is to have self-awareness of what is actually going on in your mind and in your emotions, and have some sort of handle on that. If you are living in a place that you're avoiding your inner world, if you are living in a place that you are oblivious to how you actually think and feel and react to things, you are fragile. Like, and what Jeremiah is saying, like, it is a military practice to make sure morale is at a level where you're not going to start making stupid mistakes and get yourself or somebody else hurt. One of the mornings that I shot a video, which I shot videos throughout the not having power, I was making coffee, grinding my coffee on my little battery pack, burning the propane burner outside and boiling the water and all that stuff. I mentioned the flybys of just hateful comments of people who aren't invested were high this week, and they'll fall off, they'll lose interest. And just even reading the comments on Justin's video, I was like, how in the world could you watch humans go through this and respond this way? But anyway, I won't get on that soapbox. But I had multiple people be like, people are suffering and you're showing you're making coffee. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, actually. Because you can have your little emergency preparedness plan, but if you're a coffee drinker every single day and that's a big part of you, like, grounding yourself for the day.
Also, the fact that you're addicted to the caffeine.
Yeah, actually. Like,
you want to run a chainsaw with a headache? I don't.
Seriously. Like, you have to think about these things. It's not... While, yes, I am always going to say, let's embrace uncomfortable situations because they allow us to grow. Keep your morale in mind when you are considering preparations. Keep in mind things like, you're going to have to run a chainsaw. Can you do it with a headache? That is something like really, I would say one of the biggest holes for me this week that I realized I really ended up day before yesterday having to like go out and spend some like very intense time like alone with the Lord, because I was at the point of feeling extremely broken inside, just because I was seeing so many people unprepared, and I was seeing the chaos, the accusation, the desperation, you know, all of the stuff that was going on. I had to get off of social media entirely. I talked to some of my friends in North Carolina and got their firsthand accounts of like how these communities have pulled together. My friend Brianna told me that this has been really heavy. I just cannot fathom the amount of suffering that is happening because of this storm, and it's so bizarre how these things can happen, and some people are literally, they've lost everything, and then the rest of everybody is just like, you know, we're just living normal lives, you know? I mean, even with us, we're doing all of this stuff, just trying to keep all of our food frozen and take care of our animals and take care of our kids and like make sure everything's okay while helping our community as much as we can. And it's just like the dentist called and it's like, Benjamin's appointment is today, and we're like, we can't come, you know, like you know, and it's just crazy that the world goes on. But Brianna told me that there were like haulers in North Carolina that have been blocked off that nobody could get to. And, you know, they're getting back into these places, and these people in these haulers have banded together, and one person had a spring and one person had a piece of equipment and one person had, you know, and they banded together, and they were getting into these haulers 5-6 days after the storm that people have been completely cut off. And the people in there have made it working together.
Thriving.
And it just, you know, Appalachia's that way. Anyway, but I think humanity has so much resilience, but then I see these big gaping holes in it because of a lack of self-awareness, a lack of preparation, a lack of self-responsibility, a need for comfort above all else. You know, you got to find that balance. We're saying consider comfort, consider morale, be realistic about how you want to get through something, but also like comfort cannot be your God in any situation. It will make you weak. And I realized during this, like, I don't feel mentally ready for like really hard times, because I so feel people's suffering. And it just is, it's why I keep turning the camera on and being like, hey, be prepared to take responsibility for your needs. Because, I mean, we're already in hard times. Like, I was looking this morning on my phone on the Walmart app that shows like your food orders over the years. And I was just curious. And so I was going on, and we haven't really ordered a lot of food from Walmart since we've lived here, but where we used to live, I used to order store pickup pretty regularly. And I was able to like compare prices from 3 years ago, 5 years ago to now. And it's crazy where things are right now. And I know that so many people are already suffering. And so when people stand up and they go, hard times are coming, I mean, for many people, hard times are here. And if you're one of the people that's not in complete, you know, like survival mode in the hard times that are here, like being somewhat prepared for anything like this is, we need to do that.
Yeah.
What else do we say?
Setting goals.
So here's one of the things that we suggested to our friends that we are doing. And for some of you, if you might not see the value in this, that's completely fine. But the best tools I have to give to anybody, and the best methods or like teaching that I have to give to anybody, is what we have done and grown from, what we have done and seen results from. And I'm going to use Christian language in this. I'm going to talk about God. That's the filter through which I see everything. But I hope that you can hear this through, you know, your filter. Recently, I came across a photo from 2015. where Jeremiah and we had really felt the urgency to be prepared. Didn't really have a great sense of what. We honestly were dealing with a ton of fear at that time. And we felt so strongly we need to be prepared. And mind you, this is like before YouTube. This is before any sort of platform. We were dirt broke. Like we sat down and we made this list on a piece of paper. And at the top it said the date, and it said, you know, the things we want to do on our farm. I can't remember exactly what it said. And I had like little blocks all over. It was like I drew squares, and I wrote in the squares, I wrote what we wanted. Like we wanted to raise meat chickens.
And then what it would cost to do that.
And what we needed, I listed out the equipment we needed, how much the chickens would cost, and I totaled the cost of starting that operation. And at the bottom of that box was the total. And each box, I knew we wanted to get into bees. I think we wanted to expand the garden. We wanted, at that point, I think we had, maybe we didn't even have the dairy goats yet. I think maybe this was before that.
No, this was before that.
Yeah, and so like it was all the things we want to do. This is very early on. We moved to our first farm in 2014, and it was August of that year that we got chickens for the first time. So this was like very early on in homesteading for us. Anyway, at the bottom, I want to say that list, the total of all the things we wanted to get into. And of course, we were doing things very resourcefully, using secondhand materials, and, you know, we were bootstrapping it together. And at the bottom, I think the total for everything that we really wanted to do was about $7,000.
Yeah. And
that was, at that time, a completely impossible amount of money for us to spend at all on anything. There was no way we were going to have $7,000. I mean, even scrapping it together, we were just like, this is impossible. And we ended up taking that list and sticking it on the refrigerator. And I made a habit of every time I would come across it, I would pray and be like, you know what? If you put this in my heart, this is what we're supposed to be doing. There's gonna be a way. Because I do genuinely believe when you have a desire in your heart that God planted there, like there's gonna be a way. Like I just do not think that God plants impossible dreams in people's hearts. Like I don't think that. And especially if you're feeling a burning or a leading or an urgency to be prepared or have food security, like having that urgency in your heart is proof enough that there will be a way for it, in my mind. I mean, I do really believe that if we are brave enough to hope for something and allow a desire to be planted in our heart, there will be a way. It might be a lot of hard work. It might require some patience. It might require a lot of humility along the way. I'm not saying there's a comfortable way, but I do think there's a way. So we put that list on the fridge.
Yeah.
Anytime I need to plan something uncomfortably impossible, I go back and look. I have that picture, and I go back and I look at that list. When it was impossible to think about raising meat chickens, when it was impossible to think about expanding the garden, when just $1,000 for a project was so out of reach that there was no way. The stories I could tell you about how that list got completed, they're incredible. I mean, it's stuff like Jeremiah's brother calling one day, hey, I was at the dentist office and the lady that works there, they raise goats and they're wanting a job done, but they can't quite cover the quote I gave them. And would you be interested in doing the demo and haul off in trade for dairy goats? Spotted Nubians. I mean, literally the exact goats that I desired, that Jeremiah went and did 2 or 3 days worth of work.
Yeah.
And brought home. I got to go out in a field of goats and pick which 8 I wanted. I mean, literally, instantly, what would have cost probably $2,000 to go purchase those goats. And that was part of the list. I mean, not only did those things get fulfilled, they got fulfilled in such particular excess to the deep desire. I didn't even write on the list, I want spotted Nubians. I just wanted any dairy goats. But in the secret depths of my heart, I desperately wanted spotted Nubians. And so, like, when I look back at that list and I remember all the ways those needs were met, and I look at the incredible abundance that we live in now, I make those lists boldly now. And so I told my friends, I don't want to miss out on the urgency that I felt, the clarity that I felt this week on the importance of getting prepared for hard times, for emergencies, to build a world, to build a life that is not easily shaken. I don't want to lose this, because we live in a culture that puts the focus on absolutely everything else. And when we start talking about preparedness, there's this little hint of like, are you crazy? Honestly, everybody wants to call your sanity into question. They want to act like you're just being fearful. They want to dismiss it. But the idea that you can go to the grocery store and buy food, or gas will be immediately available to you no matter what, is a very new concept. This is not how humanity has lived for all of time until the last less than 100 years. I don't want to lose the clarity that I really felt this week.
Yeah.
As far as this is actually important. So we're writing our list of the things that we want to do differently. Like, we want to build some sort of outdoor, kind of like an off-grid bathroom situation with like a compost toilet, and build some sort of outdoor shower with a water bladder that we can keep water and UV heat it and stuff like that. Is that absolutely necessary? No. I mean, we've learned we can get by rudimentary camping, but I'd rather...
Being able to take a shower is important.
It is. And I mean, we did go over to some friend's house and shower. But that's a 45-minute drive. And whenever the lines are super long at the gas station, like, I was not trying to drive a bunch, daily. I was trying to stay home as much as possible.
I didn't. I just took cold showers.
Yeah, I did take a couple of cold showers. It's not for me. I know people do the polar plunge and they say all the good things about it. I'm not that tough yet. Maybe that's what I need to do to help with my mental weakness. There was screaming.
It's on video now, so.
Oh, this. I was like, video of me screaming in the shower? You better not.
You committing to build your mental toughness through cold showers. Because you could still take one now.
That.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, man.
After a long day of sweating, a cold shower actually felt better.
Yeah. Good morning, Ezra. The list. We're going to do outdoor bathroom situation. I want to set up like an outdoor kitchen situation. That's been on our list, but it's been very casual. I wanted it for the sake of, like, I want to be able to can outside and do things without heating up the kitchen. I mean, a lot of people have to deal with, like, very cold winters and those preparations. Like, honestly, ours is the opposite. We have to cope with very hot summers. And so I've been wanting to do kind of like the outdoor kitchen situation. And some other things that we've talked about is just some redundancy and emergency power, looking at solar options to, like, keep our well on, looking at generator options. But also, hand in hand with that, those are still temporary measures. Like, anything that requires repair or fuel, that shouldn't be the only plan. So I'm also looking at, how do you do laundry off the grid, like, completely? Like, how do you do all these things by hand and have more options to be able to do things by hand? Like, I bought a hand coffee grinder. I bought a couple of, I did end up getting some solar lamps, because I had a bunch of battery operated lamps, but then I didn't have the right size batteries, because I bought them when I bought the lamps, but then they got used for other things. And so they were completely useless. Yeah. So, like, thinking through things like that.
Like the butane burner.
Yeah, I did end up getting, I'm going to do a video kind of lining out some of the things I found were, like, very helpful to have, so you don't have to sit through something this long to get that information. But I ended up ordering, hilariously, the day that this happened, I realized I need a way to cook something, heat something up inside. I've been fully focusing on outside, which meant that it rained once since this happened, and I had to figure out how, we ended up bringing up this on the porch, but that's not ideal.
Right.
So I bought a little butane eye, like cooking eye, to be able to heat things up inside, to make eggs in the morning or whatever.
Heat coffee up or whatever.
And it wasn't super expensive. I mean, it's just a really good thing to have. There were a few things like that. But for us on the list, I would say more off-grid tools and skills. like more rudimentary, like the capacity to do things without power, more emergency power. We had decided this summer, at the end of the summer, we decided we're not going to focus on building another house until after our kids are raised, which means we're going to stay in this double wide. Super nice double wide. We're very happy with this home. There's nothing else we need. Sitting in it during a hurricane did make me know we've talked about we want to do a root cellar / storm cellar. In this particular storm, we would have not gotten into an underground storm cellar because flooding was the big issue. So we wouldn't have done anything differently, but I would like to have that because tornadoes are more the issue here. Having a root cellar, you know, gives us the capacity to store food.
Sure.
So that's on our list. And then one of the remodels we've talked about doing, since we are going to be staying here long term, is like a big screened-in porch.
Yeah.
And this just confirmed for me that I really want to do that.
Well, also just changing over some stuff. So, like, we're going to put a gas range in instead, which had that happened, we would have been able to cook inside.
Yeah. Which we had already talked about that.
Right.
A lot of these things we had talked about prior to the storm, but the storm like heavily cinched them.
For sure.
And then we'd already talked about when we do a remodel, putting in some like wood burning stove fireplace situations. At least one, but maybe even two, in different places in the house to be able to heat with wood. And another thing is the prevalent wind on this property comes from kind of like southeast, and this is a double wide. So the way manufactured homes are is that the ends don't have windows that open typically. And so there are 2 windows on one end of our house, and then the rest there's no windows. But the breeze comes from that way. And we recognized our house got really, really stuffy. And so I'm going to be keeping that in mind whenever we do the remodel, to be able to have some opening windows on the sides so we can get...
maybe one on the other end.
Yeah, so we can bring a breeze in and move it through the house, because houses now are not made to run without air conditioning.
Right.
They're made for air conditioning, which means they don't breathe. They're super sealed. And that was one thing that I realized really quick within a few days. Like, it was taking a lot of effort to just keep our house from smelling bad. And it wasn't, like, our house never smells bad.
Right.
But it was just the air was not moving, and it just felt very stuffy and humid, and it was hot.
Yeah.
Oh.
The humidity was probably the worst thing.
Yeah.
Just felt like you were drinking water while you...
Well, yeah, there were a couple of days when the humidity was really high, and I mean, South Carolina, like, sometimes we really have 100% humidity, and it makes the surfaces in the house feel like...
moist.
Just a little moist. Like, it was just everything. Like, you sat on the couch and you could feel the dampness. So, yeah, thinking about that has definitely got my wheels turning. Oh, and a smokehouse was another thing that I want to put on the list. Just, like, one big issue that I realized is that we're so dependent on our freezers. I will always still have freezers because there are certain foods I prefer to eat. You know, I prefer to eat a steak seared and cooked fresh. I don't want to have to can that, you know, but for a lot of the meat that we have, like, we could put a lot of it on the shelf and make it shelf stable and smoke it, can it.
Yeah.
And not be dependent on electricity to keep it from spoiling. So, yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I think I've added everything I need to.
Yeah. Well, that's our coffee chat this morning. Kind of the things we found. I'd love to know what would be helpful for you guys as far as, like, the content we make. We do have a list. He's made a couple of videos so far that haven't come out yet. And I've got a couple that are still going to come out that I filmed parts of. So I really want to be able to share with y'all what we're learning, and I would love to know what you want to know.
Sure.
It's interesting this happened during this time of year, because, I mean, we can really focus on making some content about this. Like, the garden is really petering out, you know, I mean, it's just not requiring nearly as much, and we just downsized, so
right.
We have space to focus on this.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, it is good. I view this as an opportunity for a lot of people to just survey and assess. Listen to that glorious
washing machine
sound. Oh my goodness.
It's like Fiddler on the Roof.
I swear. That is one thing that I was like, My goodness.
Oh yeah, laundry.
I'm so spoiled to modern conveniences.
We were only without power for a week. Laundry became serious.
That's very high on my priority list. I mean, like, we washed a few things by hand.
I was down to one pair of underwear. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen.
That is, like, literally one of the top things on the list for me to learn and to have a system in place. I actually bought this stuff to do some, like, hand washing, and we're going to try it, even though we're past it. You know, I was prepared. It's what I was going to do, and then our power came on because I thought we were going to have a few more days.
That's what they said, yeah.
And so, yeah.
All right. Stay tuned.
We bless you guys. Until next time.